Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Emily from Raven Relics, and oh my gosh, I am so sorry that I went MIA for like 2-3 months. I don't even know. What has it been, 3 months? I've totally lost track of time at this point. For those of you who stayed subscribed to my channel, who stuck around and patiently waited for me to get my life together, thank you so much. Seriously, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Each one of you means the world to me. Without going into too much detail, because I don't want to bore you, basically about 3 months ago, my life totally exploded. There's no other way to say it. My life just exploded. Every sector of my life dissolved so that it could be rebuilt in a more authentic way. So ultimately it is, of course, for the best. But when you're in the middle of the chaos, when you're going through the mayhem, it doesn't always feel like it's for the best, but it truly has been. Since the last YouTube video that I made, my boyfriend and I have moved. We are now in a totally different apartment, about 20 minutes away from where we were. And hopefully you will be able to tell in this video that the lighting is totally different in my new studio space. I love it. No more like yellow undertone, grungy, crappy lighting. Hopefully this will be much, much better quality. But anyway, so my boyfriend and I moved. I picked up yet another job, so including Raven Relics, I currently have 4 jobs. Good times. It's okay though. You know, personal relationship issues, just everything. Everything that you can think of, it all happened at once. And the last 3 months have been chaos. But we are now at the end of the chaos tunnel. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully I will be able to get back into more of a regular routine, not only with creating the books, but with posting them to YouTube and social media in general. If you're not already following me on Instagram, please go ahead and do so. It's just Raven_Relics on Instagram. I post there almost every day, even if I don't post on YouTube. So you can stay connected to me through Instagram. I am also on Patreon. If you just go to Patreon and search for Raven Relics, I'll be there. And I have my website, ravenrelics.com. But Instagram is the main way to stay connected to me, if you have an Instagram or you're interested at all. So anyway, this Edgar Ende inspired tome is the tome that I have been slowly but surely working on over these last few months. I've just been doing little bits as I can here and there. There have been stretches, weeks, where I literally couldn't do any bookmaking at all. Not because I didn't want to, but because I literally did not have the time. But I do want you guys to know that every single decision that I make is ultimately for the best for Raven Relics, even if that means that I have to take a break or, you know, not work on a book for as long as I'd like to, blah, 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 whatever. Everything that I do is with the long-term vision in mind of Raven Relics making me my living. Like, making these videos right here, making the books, photographing them for Instagram, everything. That's what I want my life to be about. And so every decision that I make is headed in that direction. Slowly but surely I will get there. So without further ado, let's get into the tome that has come out of the other side of my chaos spiral. Oh goodness. Okay. So this all gray keepsake style journal was inspired by one of my favorite artists of all time. His name is Edgar Ende. E-N-D-E is his last name. He was German. He passed away in the 60s. I think it was the 60s. So he was painting primarily during World War I and World War II. He was a surreal painter. So if you are not really into strange, slightly creepy, weird things, you might not like Edgar Ende, and that is totally fine. But he was a surreal painter, and for those of you who know The Never-Ending Story, either the book or the movie, The Never-Ending Story, Michael Ende, who was the author of The Never-Ending Story, was the son of Edgar Ende. So Michael, who wrote The Neverending Story, his writings were hugely influenced by his father's paintings growing up. And it's kind of a weird synchronicity type of story that I have with both Edgar Ende and Michael Ende and how I discovered them both. If you're interested in learning about that story, then you can go to Patreon. Again, just search for Raven Relics on Patreon. The link will also be in the description box down below. I also wrote for Patreon a biography of Edgar Ende. So I'm not going to bore you with the details of Edgar Ende's life because you might not care about him at all. But if you're interested, you want to learn more, I highly recommend you visit my Patreon, or you can just Google Edgar Ende. You could Google image search his paintings. But this journal was inspired by him, and I want to say specifically inspired. This is not an Edgar Ende journal. This is not like a portfolio of his paintings or anything at all like that. This was simply inspired by him. So in reality, this is a surreal style keepsake journal, and that's it. No Edgar Ende anywhere in here. He just sparked the idea for me. So it's been so long I almost forgot my little spiel. For this journal, and every journal that I make, I use professional bookbinders board for the covers. I use archival grade adhesive. I use 100% Irish linen waxed thread for the spine, and I use 50-pound drawing paper for the text block. Here is a close-up of the Coptic stitch. Hand-sewn spine. Here's a close-up of the massive, glorious corner protectors. Focus, focus. Here we go. So I wanted to go with all gray. And of course the closure is sari silk that has been coffee dyed. I wanted to go with all gray. Gray closure, gray fabric for the covers, silver corner protectors, because I really wanted to invoke a sense of, excuse me, I wanted to invoke a sense of spaciousness, kind of like the feeling that you get when you take a deep breath, or when you walk out into the mist or into the fog. It's almost like a clean slate feeling, but with the charge of potential. It's hard for me to describe. Basically, I am hugely inspired by the landscapes themselves in Edgar Ende's paintings, and his landscapes evoke a sense of this spaciousness that I'm talking about. So that's the reasoning behind the all gray, is again, I wanted that clean slate, but with like a mysterious sort of mystical feeling at the same time. All right, so now, before we go inside, I do want to say all paper has been coffee dyed with baking soda, so the acidity is reduced. Paper is preserved for ever and ever. I don't know how long, but a very long time. And I also did get feedback from one of you guys on my last YouTube video, and you said that you preferred the longer videos where I just take my time, I show you the coffee stains up close. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my time. I'm not gonna intentionally make it, you know, take an hour, but I'm gonna take my time. And if I start hearing feedback from you guys otherwise, you know, that you prefer me to just quickly flip through and just stop at the main points, then I might change how I do things, but for now, we'll go nice and slow. All right, let's go inside. This Edgar Ende Surreal journal. So first things first, Tim Holtz end papers. We have a pocket full of all kinds of stuff as usual. Here's a close-up of the end paper and the pocket. And inside the pocket, we have a big old tag or a bookmark, whatever you'd prefer to use it as. This is a piece of Tim Holtz ephemera. An old grungy postcard. I believe this is Tsunami Rose, Black Viper Venom advertisement. I've used this before. This is an old French advertisement. And then this is the first of, I'm gonna say, maybe 10 pieces of ephemera that are truly vintage. And when I say vintage, I mean, I don't know if you can see that, 1863. Yep. I have a collection of ephemera that came from basically the same owner. I'll call her an owner. This woman that I happened to meet who has been collecting vintage ephemera for decades. They all came from her, from the same batch, and so even though not all the pieces have dates, those that do all date to the mid-1800s. So I'm going to go ahead and say that all of the real pieces of ephemera in here are from the mid-1800s. And I will point them out to you as we go. So if I say the word ephemera, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the old one. I will specifically point them out to you as we go. Here is a lovely piece of ephemera, not 1800s ephemera, an illustration. And I believe this is Italian. I don't speak Italian, so I don't know. For those of you guys who don't know, a term that I had in the back of my mind while I was making this book was uncanny valley. I don't know if any of you have heard of the term uncanny valley, but it basically means when something is super, super close to being normal, but it's not quite normal. It would be as if you were to, you know, just look at something and at first glance, everything looks exactly the way that it should. But then you do a double take and you notice that there's something kind of wrong here, or there's something off, but you can't quite put your finger on it. That's what uncanny valley means. And uncanny valley is a term that I interchange with the term surreal. So I was reminded of that because I remember when I saw this face in this illustration, it made me think uncanny valley, and I knew I had to use it. Bottom corner is a hand pointing at the sun stamp, which I have definitely used before. All stamps in here I have used in previous books. Oops. Here is a sea monster digital stamp with, I think, a god and goddess on it. Huge burn mark, one of several. I love how you can see the stamp peeking through. Here's a little tuck spot. And inside the tuck spot, I put this itty bitty baby envelope, which is the cutest thing ever. Shout out to Michelle from Country Morning Creations on Instagram. She sent me some happy mail a few months ago, and this was one of the things. I did not glue down these parts, so you can open it all the way up and use it as writing space, but if you wanted to glue this down, you could, and you'd have a real functioning baby envelope. Super cute. Here's some ledger paper. Ooh. And in this big pocket, there's a piece of paper from a book that I've owned for a long time, probably 15 years. And it's a book that's kind of like an encyclopedia of mythical beasts. So this is just a page that I ripped out from that book. And of course, coffee dyed. Here's a big side pocket made out of some old music paper. And inside the pocket is this extremely grungy graph paper. It is so grungy that you can't even see the lines on it anymore. It was graph paper at one point. And down the bottom corner here, we've got a griffin stamp. Here's a big pocket with an illustration of a raven or a crow reading a book, walking down the street. Super surreal. A little uncanny valley. And inside the pocket is just a gray envelope. chandelier stamp. Beautiful speckly stains. And then there's a piece of patterned paper here that has the North and South Pole, one on either side. So this is South Pole. Digital illustration of a hot air balloon. This is a little piece of ephemera, just a little ticket, not a piece of real ephemera. And then folded over is just this old newspaper that I made into an envelope shape. Another burn. The way that I coffee dye the paper makes it so that the stains all come out really different. So you can see just from this side, light and speckly, this side, dark and splotchy. And then I think, nope, there's another page that has another type of stain. We'll get to it eventually. Here's another page from that mythical beasts encyclopedia-like book. Oh yeah, here we go. Super dark. And then on the other side, light and speckly. I love using 50-pound Canon drawing paper for my books because the paper is thick without being too thick. You could easily use, you know, any kind of standard pen and it's not going to bleed through. I have, however, been thinking about using recycled paper. I'm going to have to look into that a little bit more, but it is something I've had in the back of my mind. Here is the other side of that striped paper. Postcard. And this is another piece of real ephemera. I wonder if there's a date on here. This is 1926. Okay. And then on the other side is this little piece of paper. I put a shield stamp up there. And it is a fold out. Folds out 2 times. Here's the other side of that polar map. This is the North Pole side. I can never remember what these things are called. Is it like a... Oh, no, I'm not even going to try to guess. There's some sort of mythical beast, and there's another page where I have another digital stamp of these creatures, and I can't remember the name of them, but they're super cool. They're like sea monsters with horse heads. They're just crazy. Very surreal. This is just blank paper. I had started to print a map, but then my printer failed on me, and I didn't want to not use this beautiful piece of grungy paper, so I just left that there, turned it into an envelope. Lovely coffee stains. Here is a piece of parchment paper that I sewed right into the signature, the middle of the signature. If you fold open the edges, you'll see that it's a nice big decorative piece of paper. I thought it would be better to fold it to fit to size as opposed to cut off the nice scrolly bits. Candelabra stamp down there. And we've got a kind of a steampunk looking piece of ephemera that I burned, and it's just blank, coffee stained on the back. This is another piece of Tim Holtz ephemera. Tiny little pocket in this thin piece of paper. Postcard. And another piece of paper from that Mythical Beasts. Now that is just creepy. This is supposed to be some old illustration of like a flying fish sea monster. That's pretty disturbing. I had to put it in there. If it's weird, I put it in. Okay. There's a lion's head stamp that I have used before. Tiny little pocket. This is just a tag or bookmark. And this is another piece of real vintage ephemera from 1876. And on the back is the Prince of Wales. All right. Here's the first of two Jester illustrations that I thought were pretty cool, slightly uncanny valley in a good way. Here's just a envelope made out of some damask style paper. Grungy piece of paper with the image just slightly coming through onto this side, but the rest of the image is on the other side of the paper. I thought this was appropriate because it's just a little off, if you know what I mean. It's a little weird, but in a good way. I love this piece of ephemera. Family records, how pretty, how cool. Love that. All right. Snake wrapped around a castle stamp, and then here is the other side of that piece of paper with the full image on it. And I just love this. It's an old, kind of medieval, but not medieval. I don't know what, we'll call it medieval damask kind of woman. And then, I don't know if you can see the helmet there. More Tsunami Rose, potions, advertisements, and then a little piece of a map. Snake arrows and a crown. Beautiful wallpaper style patterned paper. Another burn mark. You can see the map just peeking through. This is an old woodcut. I think they're just called woodcuts. How they used to, I don't know how it works, but I think this is a woodcut of an old city. It might be London, I don't remember. Here's that second cute little Jester. And in the pocket, I actually had the same thing happen to me twice. So you remember that other envelope? I said I started to print the map and then my printer cut out on me. Well, it happened again. So I made two envelopes out of beautiful grungy paper with just a little bit of that map at the top. Makes it funky, makes it unique. I think it's cool. So, and then of course we have the other side of that woodcut map. This is an image I've used before, but as just a little tiny journaling card. This time I printed it out large scale on a piece of coffee dyed paper. Other side of that wallpaper, patterned paper, graph paper, pocket with just a little like timetable, and then another envelope with this illustration. Big side pocket, and in here is one of my favorite journaling cards. See if I can get a good close-up here. It's got all these little body parts, but then in the center you can see this kind of a cityscape, just a very barren kind of, what would you call it? Like a city square, that's what I'm thinking. The reason why I love this so much is because this image in the center of that city square, that's the most like an Edgar Ende painting out of any image that I've found. And if you Google image Edgar Ende paintings, you will start to see what I mean. And the back, of course, always grungy, half burnt. You know the drill. Tree of Life stamp. And then we've got this cute little piece of ephemera, Tim Holtz, and then another page from my Mythical Beasts book. This time we've got a ginormous slug with some kind of antlers or something. Other side of that graph paper. Edgar Ende also had a thing for angels, so I wanted to include this little dude. I don't know if he's an angel, but he's some sort of old angelic-like statue. And then these angels, which I've used as a pocket. Stuck a library card in there. This is just a shorter piece of lined paper. Aha! And here we come to a free-floating folio file insert. I don't even really know what I'm going to call it. I think I called it a folio file on Instagram. I think that's what I called it. So I did one of these with Silentium as well. It's just literally just a piece of cardstock that I folded in half and decorated to be a functional little file folder. I added a pocket to the cover of this one. And there's the cutest little baby envelope and another piece of ephemera in there. And on the big paper clip holding it all together, we have a sparkly eye charm. And inside, we've just got a few different pockets going on. So some shallow ones up here and then bigger ones down here. This is an image that I posted to Instagram because I loved it so much. Grunged it all up, burnt it a little bit. Very surreal, very creepy. And then this is another piece of real ephemera. There's the back. Whoops, there's the back. And this is from Boston, which is basically where I'm from. I mean, I live like 40 minutes from Boston, so close enough. This is actually an advertisement for people that made like fireplaces. I'm not going to read you the whole thing or try to read it now, but it'll be really cool if you are the person who ends up buying this journal. This will be a cute little thing for you to read, dating again to 1800s. And we've just got a couple tags and a postcard in there. All right. So it's just something fun, something different, freestanding. You can move it around, you can take it out, whatever you like to do. Other side of the lined paper. Here's a side pocket with a couple pieces of Tim Holtz ephemera. This is a little banner. You could technically tuck something under there, but you just want to make sure that it was kind of thick because otherwise it could slip out. Oh, I love this paper. Love it, love it, love it. It is very obvious to me at this point that the paper itself is my passion. And I'll tell you guys now. I was going to save it for the end of the video, but something else that I've come to realize over the last few months of absolute chaos and mayhem is that my heart and soul is really calling me to make books that are mostly blank. So what I think I'm going to be doing is making books that are completely blank and then books that are semi-blank. So still have some, you know, patterned paper, a couple maps, a couple stamps sprinkled in there, you know, but mostly blank. I really feel called to create books that are just super laden, I guess, with atmosphere, but atmosphere created by a few, like a handful of very specific, perfectly placed things. So this might actually be the last super, super detailed, very, very thick keepsake style journal that I make for a long, long time. I don't know when, if ever again I will, but we'll see. Sparkly side pocket on some aqua paper. Postcard, and then this is just an envelope that is, I believe, blank on the inside. Here's some really thick, pretty cardstock. We are at 32 minutes. All right. Other side of the cardstock, shallow, low pocket, shield stamp, 2 more pieces of real ephemera. They do not have dates on them, but they are either from the mid-1800s or very, very, very early 1900s. Gargoyle stamp. Here's a piece of vellum. Another thick, pretty piece of cardstock pocket, and inside said pocket is another tag, just like the one in the front cover pocket. This is another piece of real ephemera. Is there a date on here? I don't know if there's a date on here, but it's for Aunt Sally's baking powder. Another burn. There's that snake wrapped around a castle stamp again. Here's something kind of cool. So this, both of these pieces of paper, the map and this, are both sewed right into the signature, so they cannot be moved. The map back here is a map of Germany. Edgar Ende was German, so I had to throw some sort of German ephemera in there somewhere. And then this is a beautiful piece of grungy floral paper that I also sewed into the signature, but folded. So, and I love the way the stains came out. Oh my gosh. All right. Here's a cathedral, or like a clock tower with some birds. The other side of that thick cardstock paper, this is a little glycine or glassine, however you pronounce it, bag, which I cut in half, coffee dyed, and then put this pretty envelope inside. Little tiny envelope. And if you unfold the envelope, there's a skeleton key. Not a real one, but still cool. Anytime I put a key in an envelope, I always make sure that I fold up the edges so that I can just sneak it in there and it won't fall out. Here's the other side of the vellum. Pocket, Tim Holtz ephemera, and then this is a piece of real French music paper. This is definitely from the 1800s. So I wanted to put that next to the vellum to keep it just a little bit protected anyway. More graph paper, aqua blue, cranberry colored seahorse stamp up there. Graph paper, another big burn. Other side of the graph paper, this is a really funky image. It's like some cats, I don't know, having like a, is there some sort of like a court situation going on? I don't know what's happening. But anyway, it was very surreal. Had to use it. This is a real piece of ephemera from the 1800s. This is not a real piece of ephemera, but it's cool. So I just stuck those right up there. There's the other side of that aqua paper, other side of the graph paper that's been folded out. Here is a digital illustration that was just too funky to not use. So it's a human skeleton walking up to a giant elk skeleton, I guess. All right. All right, we are getting to the end here. Oh yes, here's another one of those sea monster, horse head monster thingies that I can never remember the name of. It's some really crazy name. I think they're so cool. I would use images like this in basically every book that I make. Here's a little image of Red Riding Hood that I used as a pocket. Not real ephemera. Real ephemera. 1800s ephemera. This goes with, I think, the piece of ephemera that was in the front cover pocket. Same exact, not the same exact piece of ephemera, but the same advertisement, or the same company, that's what I mean. An advertisement from the same company. I can speak. Okay, getting there, getting there. Last little pocket. This is another piece of real ephemera. 1800s. Yellow dock root syrup from Providence, Rhode Island, and then on the back are some statistics of the world at the time. Kind of cool. Raven on a branch stamp. And here's the back.